everyone. This is Sophia Smallstorm. I'm happy to have back with me today Anita Whitney. I did a very interesting interview with her a couple of weeks ago, and it just blew my mind. It was the thing that put all of this corporate government business together in one clean picture, and I've since been talking about it on podcasts with other people, but Anita is the source that clarified the world for me in this regard. So I'm very, very happy to be able to talk to you again. How are you, Anita?
I'm great, and thanks for having me back.
Yeah, so today let's get into more of the personal aspect of corporations, this straw man legal fiction that they bestow on us through our short form birth certificate, our name in all capital letters, which is displayed on our checking accounts, credit cards, driver's license. This is the personal corporation they have made out of us, and it's through and by our signature that we attach our living, breathing self to this corporate entity that really does business for us in our lives, right?
Right, absolutely. This is your straw man, and in that wonderful documentary, Straw Man, The Nature of the Cage, which is free online for anyone who wants to watch it. One of those that were interviewed in that, his name was Jan Widrick, explained it, I thought, really well, Sophia, when he said, your straw man is like the coat that you wear. The problem being is when they want to punish the straw man, they grab you with it. And I thought that was a very good way to put it. If you don't know there's a straw man, you go right along with it.
Right. You know, I have actually started to post a lot of this on my blog. So my blog can be accessed by Sophia with an F, smallstorm.com, or just going to aboutthesky.com and clicking on the Smallstorm blog tab. But I have put up many of the resources Anita has directed me to, one being that documentary, The Nature of the Cage, and the other being this series of interviews. It seems a little intimidating when you start. There are at least 17, if not 19, and they are parts of a long phone conference call with a Joyce Rosenwald, who died in 2011. She spent 45 years doing research into what's called this legal system. And Anita, you tell us about Joyce. She's fantastic.
She is fantastic, and I just ran across her recently and found out that she used to be on RBN regularly before she died, and people have been listening to her for many years. Apparently, she had a close association with Irwin Schiff, and I don't know how many people who are listening know who he is, but he was fairly well known for writing a book about the bogus taxes that we're asked to pay, exposing the tax situation in the IRS. So she did a lot of amazing research and started, and when I listened to the interview, she started by going to law libraries, which is how some of the people that I work started. They've been around a long time as well, and they started in law libraries. But she was an active researcher when the internet became available, Sophia. And the Wayback Machine she mentioned in her interview in 2011, she knew all about that, and you told me about that, so I learned something new from both you and Joyce about doing searches. I think she's incredibly amazing. And one of the things that I picked up on, Sophia, when I listened to her, is she seemed to have started by looking at the Justice Department. When she took a close look at the Justice Department, she figured out that it was just a branch of the executive corporation of the mother corporation. And from that point, she started going down from the pinnacle to see how far it was reaching into our courts. And that's pretty much how she got it all figured out. And I think she had it extremely well figured out. Listening to that interview, I was so impressed.
Yeah, she's actually very easy and a very user-friendly mind and voice. So I would urge people, take your time. Listen to all those YouTubes. They're not very long. They're 10 to 14 minutes each. and they string together. One guy actually told me he started listening, and then he fell asleep in part 2, and when he woke up, it was part 11. So, yeah, but hopefully, you know, his subconscious absorbed a lot of good material while he was snoring. So,
Yes.
yeah, Anita, thank you so much for telling me about Joyce. I've posted those interviews, and there's a very interesting exchange that follows after Joyce hangs up. It's basically a 3-hour call, and these other people who are lay researchers into this thing we'll call the legal system, they are trading information and trying to help one another. And it seems like we should really create some kind of forum where we can come together and we can trade and share our experiences, trying to, you know, shake this straw man thing off us, which reminds me of the Groucho Marx skit with Scotch tape, you know, where you touch the Scotch tape with one thumb and you try to take it off with the other one and it sticks to that. So this straw man is pretty indelibly stuck to us, and you've been telling me that we have to be very mindful of the contracts we sign and the power of our signature. And you were telling me before we started this call about the check book that we have and the dotted line on which we sign and what that really is. You want to
Yes.
tell us?
Yeah, someone had told me that I needed to take a look at it. It's microprint, and on my check it says microprint, and so I got a microscope, and I looked at it, and lo and behold, it says authorized signature. And so you say to yourself, why would they make that in microprint so that you can't even see it with the average magnifying glass? You have to get practically a microscope to see it. Why would they do that, Sophia? If they were not intentionally concealing information. Because you would have thought that authorized signature, well, of course, you know, but then you look at it and you look at, in the upper left corner of my check is my name in all caps. And then when I sign my signature, it says authorized signature. So I'm authorized to sign for the all caps name. What was interesting, there's a wonderful book out there called Fruit from a Poisonous Tree that I believe was released in 2008. And it was written by attorney Melvin Stamper, and he talks a lot about this. He has different strategies for how to get out from under the straw man, as many do. But he put a section in there, Sophia, that if you don't mind, I'd like to read, because this is really an important quote. Joyce talks about this system really going into place in the 30s, 1933, when Roosevelt took the people's gold. The United States Corporation was bankrupted, and they made the people and the land sureties for the debt, for the national debt. And Joyce talks about that, for the debt of the corporation. And that's when they created this straw man. And let me read to you, because it explains it so well, and it's coming from the horse's mouth. This is a quote from the private papers of Woodrow Wilson. It is a quote of Colonel Edward Mandell House. Okay, this is what he said in a private meeting. Quote, very soon every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people, and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer not being able to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever, by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, forever to remain economic slaves through taxations secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million would ever figure our plans. And if by accident one or two would figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debt to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap to us huge profits beyond our wildest expectation and leave every American contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. We call it Social Security. Without realizing it, every American will assure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner every American will unknowingly be our servant. However begrudgingly, the people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America, unquote. Now that's exactly what we've got, Sophia.
When was that written?
This is from, well, the quote is out there everywhere, but it was specifically taken from page 59 of Melvin Stamper's book, if people want to read it. But according to Melvin Stamper's research, this is what it said. Edward Mandell House had this to say in a private meeting with Woodrow Wilson, who was president from 1913 to 1921, from the private papers of Woodrow Wilson. So it doesn't really say when. They just found it in his private papers.
Right. So when he talks of we, Mandell House, who is he talking about?
International bankers, the Federal Reserve.
Okay. And he's telling this to Wilson?
Yes. Wilson said that conversation took place between the two.
And
yes.
how did Wilson feel about it? Was he included in the we, or is he on the butt end of it?
Wilson, from what I can gather, someone has a quote out there where he really regretted having signed the Federal Reserve into law, and it was his most regrettable mistake. I don't think he felt good about it. I think it was done, and he couldn't undo it.
Yeah, he was blackmailed into doing that.
That's what I heard, too. That's what I recall.
So it comes from, the second decade, basically, of the last century.
Right.
That's when he was president.
Right, and that's when the Federal Reserve Act was passed. That's when the bar was brought over here. I mean, the whole scheme was set up. I know, it was all in place by 1933, basically.
Well, let's clarify for people who are a little bit unfamiliar. So we get made into little corporations ourselves through this all capital letter designation of such. Our real full name is used in all capital letters because that, according to the U.S. print manual style, is how you designate corporations. You use all capitals. And corporations are legal fictions. They're made-up organizations. They are simply a bunch of rules and regulations on a piece of paper. And our laws, as we believe them to be, you drive on this side of the road and you don't park here and that kind of thing. Those are actually just commercial codes, right?
Right.
But may I ask you, we really, I suppose you could try driving on the other side of the road and you would get a lot of difficulty. You might have accidents. But if you have a driver's license, do they not say that licensed drivers should follow the UCC of the rules of the road?
Yes, when you get your driver's license, you do agree to abide by the rules of the road. And that is one reason why it has to be renewed every 4 years, because that will incorporate the new rules that they have passed.
Right. So that all makes sense to me, although it's an uncomfortable situation to be in when you're dragged into court and you don't understand that by appearing you make a contract. We're making contracts all the time without knowing it.
Right.
When we go to the doctor's office and they have that intake sheet and we put all our information on it, that's a contract too, right?
Basically, yes. And many doctors play the game where their forms say, under penalty of perjury, which is ridiculous. They can't enforce that. But what has happened is when you get stopped, let's say you're driving and they perceive that you're speeding, they will come up, and you see that in that documentary, Straw Man, The Nature of the Cage. They will come up and ask you to identify yourself. They are seeking to contract with you and put you under their authority. So they will say, give me your driver's license and registration. Those are two contracts. They want verification that there is a contract between you and the state. And then they will make some comment about, did you know you were driving 50 in a 40 zone or something? When you respond to them, what you are doing is you are agreeing to their authority. And remember, they're a corporation. They don't have authority over you without your permission. You will see how hard they try to get you to say, do you understand? They want you to say, do you stand under our authority? If you follow their commands and stand under their authority, then they make the conclusion that you are agreeing to all their statutes and their authority.
So they actually want you to agree to...
Yes.
Do you understand is a question they pose repeatedly until they get you to say yes. And that really is a trick question. I mean, do you stand under our authority?
That's correct.
So show me your driver's license and registration, connects you with the agreement that you made when you obtained your driver's license or renewed it, that you need to abide by the rules of the road. And that pulls your whole straw man thing into the current present time picture.
Right. But that's also evidence, Sophia, that we keep recontracting. In other words, there are on YouTube some people who said, have I committed a crime, to the officer, am I free to go? And the officer cannot answer that he's committed a crime. And they don't offer up the name. They don't offer up the driver's license. They just keep saying to the officer, have I committed a crime? Have I injured property? Have I injured any person or property? Have I injured any person or property? Are you going to arrest me for a crime? And when the officer can't say, yes, you have committed a crime, then the individual will say, am I free to go? Am I free to go? And eventually, most often, they will be allowed to leave.
Okay, so I'm going to clarify something else. By your driver's license, you've agreed to abide by the rules of the road and their uniform commercial code. And if it's posted that you shouldn't drive faster than 55, and you are pulled over, and he tells you that you were going 65 in a 55 zone, if you don't agree, if you don't say, okay, fine, then you don't have to abide by that regulation?
Remember, it's your straw man that agreed to the rules and regulations.
I see. Okay, so that makes more sense.
Yeah. Right, it's your straw man.
All right. So, this whole straw man thing that we drag around, it's like a doll that's invisible that goes everywhere with us, potentially.
Right.
And we connect to it when we sign or add some contractual experience to our life. And we don't understand that these contracts, people make contracts all the time. If I say I'll babysit your children and you'll pay me this much per hour and please come at 7 o'clock, then that's a contract, right?
Okay, but that's the perfect contract. That's what some people call common law. You are dealing with a woman who has a child. You are a living flesh and blood woman. She is a living flesh and blood woman. They're equal. There's no straw man in that relationship. And you're free to contract with her. She's free to contract with you. And this is how we should all be doing business. And I know you shared with me some of your business encounters. This is the way you prefer doing business. This is completely legitimate. This is the way the world should be.
Right. And when we use the word business, it should be saved for something else. I was telling you about personal arrangements made with people who break their word all the time, because that's the modern thing to do.
Yeah, that's
and technological conveniences have enabled us to do that. I mean, in the old days, you looked forward to getting together with somebody because you didn't do it that much. I was about to say the business of life, but the living of life took time. I mean, you might have to go and pound your clothes on rocks down by the stream. You didn't have a lot of leisure time. So relaxing with friends and family was something that people looked forward to. And today you make a plan with someone, and you know what? 5 minutes before they're supposed to meet you, they call you by cell phone and they tell you, I'm not going to be able to make it today. Huh?
That's discouraging.
It's very discouraging. And that seems to be what happens more often than not. And I've been telling people, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to make the mistake any longer of believing you when you say, let's get together on such and such day. I'm not going to make that mistake, because when I set that time aside and I try to come through, and then I get the message that they can't do it. And so this is what's happened to us, Anita, is our word is worth nothing any longer.
And I think part of that is, Sophia, that there's been a social engineering that's gone on. Geez, I think if you've read any of the information about the RAND Corporation, and I think Alex Abila wrote a book about it, Age of Reason, I think was the name of his book, and Soldiers of Reason. And he was talking about how the RAND Corporation set up social engineering incentives throughout our society, and their goal was to eliminate all altruism and nationalism, because both of those were in opposition of what they wanted to do, which is gain complete control. They want to control us all. They don't want us to relate to each other. They want to control us with these contracts as if we are corporations. And all of the trust that we build on a one-to-one basis, where I can purchase things from you, I can share stories with you, all of these things are obstacles to the rulers who want to control all life and all activity. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. And I was just thinking how many people send me these drips and drabs emails now, which is really the conducting of a conversation through the cloud, where others are privy to it.
Right.
And people have lost the desire and the enjoyment of having a conversation between themselves face to face. They would rather send you a crappy little text with a little humorous remark in it, and then 20 minutes later you respond, and this goes on for a couple of days, you know? So, yeah, I'm sitting here, carping again, and I wish I didn't do that. But I want to go back to something you said about the checks, that line is, in fact, it's very interesting, because when I had my last checks printed, I put my own little design in the corner, because that was my, personalization of my checks. And I was complaining to the bank that the rest of the check, I said, look at this thick line they put here and this thick line they put here. But for the signature, they put this thin, shaky, wobbly line. It's like, I don't know if you've ever done typesetting. We call it a 1-point rule, half-point rule, 2-point rule. It's the thickness of the line. And I said, why does this line for signing, why is this so thin and crappy looking? And the banker had no idea. Now, what we should have done was what I just did a few minutes ago. Get my little microscope, put in new batteries, and look at that line. And in fact, yes, exactly what you said. It says authorized signature.
Right.
So what I want to, that's why it's so grade looking, because it's actually a bunch of teeny, teeny little letters that says authorized signature. So Anita, why is that? Why is that some kind of trick? Authorized signature. Doesn't it make sense that, this is your checking account, so this check only needs to have authorized signatures on it, and this is where you sign.
Yeah, but see, you're not signing. You're signing for the straw man. You're not signing for Sophia Smallstorm, the living flesh and blood woman. You are signing for the straw man, all caps, Sophia. You are an authorized signatory for Sophia Smallstorm.
On that account. Now, I developed last night, as I was falling asleep, a new term. You know how they have LGBT?
Yeah.
We need to start LCFB.
Okay.
And when the police officer pulls you over, he says, "Are you so-and-so?" And you say, "LCFB, lowercase flesh and blood."
Well, we have a pocket card notice for that situation that I think might work as well. I mean, I'd be happy to see how your LCFB works.
No, we can all start it. This is
Yeah.
how you start trends. I'm starting it.
Right.
You can say to people, "I'm doing this with you as an LCFB relationship, LCFB contract, LCFB arrangement." And you can, whenever you can sign LCFB. Lowercase flesh and blood. This is not any corporate signature over here.
Right. The other thing that is important to note when that gentleman is standing there in his police costume, he works for the corporation. He's an employee for the corporation. And we need to get that straight in our heads, Sophia. We don't have a government. We do not have a government. We've lost it. We lost the country when in 1933, we actually probably lost the country in 1871 when Washington, D.C. became the federal corporation. But we don't have a government, and that's what's so hard for people to understand. You've got a corporate network posing as a government, and they do not have the authority to do what they're doing. It's just that we're consenting that allows this game to keep going on and on and on. Too few people challenge their authority, and Joyce made that so clear in her interview on My Private Audio. They don't have the authority. They do not have the authority. They're just a corporation. And I wish the people who are listening to this interview would kind of get that through their head. Maybe there's a remedy down the road where we can get back a legitimate government, but for now, it seems wise to me to find ways that it doesn't entrap us into doing things that are causing us harm or injury or not in our best interest. For the moment, that seems to be our best strategy.
Or causing us to lose wealth, which is one big goal and ambition of this game that we're roped into. Now, Anita, the series on My Private Audio, the interview of Joyce Rosenwald, is titled Parens Patriae.
Right.
And that is a term I began to use when I stumbled on it in an interview of, I believe it was Carlos Morales, who was a Child Protective Services former worker at CPS. And he explained that through the doctrine of parens patriae, CPS could seize children from parents because, in fact, the state has a higher authority than the parents to the child. And you explained to me that it is done through the straw child.
Correct. Unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us. That is, that document that you filled out when the baby's born, in their commercial system, they consider that a bills of lading. That's called the certificate of live birth, where you are telling them, this is what I'm presenting to you, this little human, and here's all the details, and they have truckloads of details they want on this little human and you. And then that gets presented to the hospital, who presents it to the state, who creates a bond and a permanent birth certificate with the little human being. That's their straw man. They create the straw man. And that is what they own. Carlos, I don't think, understands. They created that birth certificate. That final birth certificate is their creation, created by the corporation. They own that birth certificate. You do not. But what you own is the little child.
You mean they own the legal entity?
They own the birth certificate that they create. The legal entity, yes, that they create.
Because the birth certificate is a piece of paper. So what?
Yeah, that's correct. That's a straw man. It's nothing but a piece of paper.
Okay, so there's a legal entity associated with that piece of paper. A legal entity is created upon the issuance of that piece of paper, and that's the thing they own rights to. And as long as you connect your child, like you explained, I think it was in our last interview, or in an interview I heard of you, that when you sign your children up for school, you are signing on behalf of them because they're considered minors and not mature enough to sign for themselves. And you are basically allowing the state to dictate what happens in the schooling process of this child. So if the state has decided that Wi-Fi in the classrooms is the proper methodology of disseminating education, then that's that. Once you've signed your kids up, you've already permitted the state to exercise its judgment upon your flesh and blood child.
Right. You've registered, you created a contract with the state for that school and all the rules and regulations that go with this, which include vaccine mandates, which we just found out in California. There's no longer, if you register your child, your little flesh and blood living child in California, they will try to tell you that you must have all recommended vaccines.
Right.
Or they will not accept your child in their public schools. So, this is the problem is, of course, they don't understand it either. They think they have this authority, but I keep trying to get people to understand, Sophia, that the schools, in my state, I discovered that, and it is, we talked last time about the article on our website called Dissecting the Basics of Our Legal System on anticorruptionsociety.com. That's when I discovered in 2009 that the schools are a corporate entity as well. And so if you go to a public, you vote for the school board and you think they kind of represent you, right? However, if you go to a school board meeting, you will find very much that you're at their business meeting, and they generally will allow parents and attendees who are not there for school business or not school employees to make comments up to 2 to 3 minutes. That's it, though. They don't answer questions. They do allow you to come in and make a comment. Now, I don't know why people don't understand that that's a huge red flag, that they don't work for you. But it is.
Well, people, I think, believe that in the interest of allowing everyone to have a chance to say something, the comments are kept to 2-3 minutes. But
well, that's what they tell them, yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, common sense that we apply as trusting people to a game that is not, as you say, in our interests at all. Right. And is designed to control us, suck wealth out of us, restrict us. And I think, honestly, Anita, that what they are seeking to do is compress us in terms of our psyche, the being. The human being is a compound term. And they're trying to compress the being part of us into that legal fiction. That's what they want us to ultimately become.
Well, they have already, based on the birth certificate, and he even said that, will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value.
Who said that? Mondale House?
Yes, and I read that a little earlier. Stripped of their rights and given a commercial value. And that's what they've done. We are a resource to them. We are the sureties, and Joyce explains that better than I am probably. We are the sureties for the debt. People say that there's nothing backing the U.S. dollar, and most of the people who say that, I think, believe it, But we're backing the U.S. dollar. It's not true. There's nothing backing it. It's us.
Right.
Our straw man, our resources, our flesh and blood, your ability to drive a car or attend a meeting or whatever it is that you do. We give life to this corporation. We are the backing for the Federal Reserve note. That's us. And people don't get that. They think that there's nothing that backs it. No, he makes this very clear. We are the surety for the debt, and Joyce makes that clear as well.
So we backed the debt, but I thought the dollar was backed by gold until the 70s, and then it became the petrodollar. So the debt
Right.
is different from the dollar.
Correct. But the dollar, remember, it's the Federal Reserve note, it is a private script. It is
Okay.
a private script. So what's behind it? Well, the assets of the United States are what's behind it. When they took the gold, remember, they took everybody's gold
In the 30s, yeah.
in the 30s, and they changed, everything went upside down from that point. Then they gave us their script. We became the creditors, we became the surety for the currency at that time. And people don't understand, but that's what we are. We're the surety for the currency. Now, I don't know what they're going to do when they're reducing the population. We haven't gotten that far. But I do believe they're replacing us with automation and robots, so they have artificial entities to walk about and to do things that they need done. And now they have a surplus of humans and not enough employment for them, and therefore they're trying to reduce the population.
I think they may actually substitute the earth as the collateral for the money. They're going to have possibly an earth-backed currency rather than us. That's the next phase. And people will be talked into using that kind of currency because it has the planet itself. This is all part of the whole Agenda 21 Earth sustainability protocols. But anyway, I think this is extremely interesting information. I hope that it's sinking in. People are understanding how, as you walk through your life, doing all your daily stuff, how often that straw man is right behind you.
Well, and Sophia, I wanted to add this because you brought it up, and it was such an excellent point about this face-to-face contact that we have with each other. One of the reasons I'm absolutely convinced they want us to use email, they want us to text, is that they absolutely understand something called common wisdom, collective wisdom. And if you've ever been with a group of people, I meet with a group of people about once a month, and we have lunch, and gosh, the lunch goes on and on and on. We hate to even break away because we share so much information with each other. And I realize when I have these face-to-face lunches with this group that I teach them something, they teach me something, and we discover things together. This is the collective wisdom, I think, Sophia, that scares them.
Well, I mean, just to argue, emails enable us to share what we know through sending people links and forwarding articles and writing our comments. But the thing is, they're privy to that. They cannot eavesdrop on personal conversations everywhere. They are starting to try in certain instances, but, there's a lot of interference to get a proper, recording of that conversation. So I think that the general movement into cyber communication is part of a surveillance project. But you're right. I mean, there are aha moments, and there's the appreciation. When you tell somebody something and their eyes light up because they have a dawning or a revelation, and you have a renewed connection with them.
Yes, and just listen to your voice. You put a lot of emotion. You put part of what I get when I hear you speak is I get more than just the words. And that's what's so beneficial by us talking on the phone or talking face-to-face versus texting. I mean, that just has no emotion, and we can share some info, but we don't really share passion. We don't share encouragement. We don't share, too often, we don't share jokes. I mean, it's just so deficient compared to talking to living beings, don't you think? I mean, living beings you can get so many words in an hour. It's just amazing. I couldn't possibly type that fast.
That's right. It's not possible to explain or impart the nuances that you get with conversation. And yet, here you and I are on Skype. It's not even video Skype. Yeah. It's just Skype. And cavemen would say, what? Why are they doing that? Why don't they just sit down? And we are spread apart. And here's another reason why we have these contracts all the time, which I explained in a couple of shows, maybe on the one with you. But our society is not, we don't know each other. I mean, think how many people you see during a day that you'll never see again, you have never seen before. And do you even care? You don't even notice.
Right.
So when we make arrangements with each other, we are taught that there's, if things go bad, you should always have it in writing. Did you get a contract? Did you have it? Did you put it in writing? Or you have this legal system that you can avail yourself of if, some arrangement should fall apart and you should have suffered damages or something like that. Something significant. But anyway, you're telling me that the legal system and everything is kept in place by the bar. Now, would you explain, why is that even capitalized, BAR? What does it mean?
British Accreditation Regency. And historically, it would appear, Dean Henderson and others have written about this, that the bar was created by the banksters to enforce their contracts. The London Bar Guild, and at the time that there was a London Bar Guild, it was created by Rothschilds, and at that time, I believe, by then they controlled the Bank of England. And he sent representatives. We have a wonderful article that was well researched on Anti-Corruption Society. If you go to the page Source Documents and scroll down, you'll see an item that is listed as the bar card. And this individual did fabulous research. So apparently the American Bar Association, which was not voted on or created by the people of America. Okay, this was not an act of Congress. The American Bar Association was established in Chicago in the early 1900s, and from that, this private bar association branched out, and the bar card, that article explains how it happened, branched out throughout the country, and it is a private guild. It is still today a private guild. The bar attorneys are not licensed with the state. They have their own entity. They get their bar card through the Supreme Court, which is the bar. The judges of the state Supreme Court can punish all bar attorneys and tell them that they can sanction them and say you can't practice law if they are bad boys or girls and don't do what they're supposed to do. If you see an attorney in a courtroom and he challenges the judge can accuse him of contempt of court. The judge can have the bailiff put him in a cell. I mean, this is a private enterprise that has taken over our legal systems and our courtrooms. And all they have is they get a little card when they pass an exam proving that they learned the rules that the bar has created. This is where the whole UCC came from. The Uniform Commercial Code was brought in and implanted across the country over the last 75 years by groups of lawyers, bar members. And if you go and read, and I think you mentioned to me that you had Who is Running America, which is free on Anti-Corruption Society on the homepage. If you scroll down, you can click on that. That author did a fabulous job explaining how the Uniform Commercial Code was implanted by stealth into our country, and the public pretty much was kept in the dark. The public still believes Constitution is the law of the land, no matter how many times they seem to get hammered by these rules and regulations that seems difficult for them to understand that it's the rules and regulations that are controlling their life, not legitimate constitutional law.
Now, can you repeat? I'm going to link all these articles in the description on the show. So, Who is Running America? I know where to find that. What was the article on the
The
bar?
bar card. The bar card.
That's the article?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
It's listed on the source documents page, and it's called the bar card.
Okay.
And in that, we included quotes from Melvin Stamper explaining some of this. This idea that it was the London Bar Guild, that was the research that Attorney Stamper did. And he exposed that. And basically what he said is the goal of the bar, the bankers in the bar, they're almost one and of the same. The goal was to make contract law superior to common law or constitutional law. And that's what they've done. If you sign the contract, you're consenting, you're giving your consent. So you can't sign a contract and then claim that your rights were violated. All they'll do is come back and say, but you agreed. Here's your signature. This is why everyone says your signature is your most important possession. Because you can sign away any right, you can sign away your children, you can sign away all kinds of things without even realizing that's what you're doing.
Right, so one important thing Joyce says, and I can tell you where she says it, it's part 4 at about 14 minutes.
Okay.
She explains that mistake is a remedy under the UCC, which is fortunate. If
Right.
you've made a mistake or you weren't fully informed, that can get you out of some of these contractual arrangements, can't it?
Yes, it can, and you have to use that word, though. People have to understand that some of this is very word specific, and you have to use that word. We put a little section, Sophia, in Lawfully Yours. That's a guide that a bunch of us put together to help people navigate this commercial legal system. And it is, again, on our website, a tab at the top. It says Lawfully Yours, and you click on that, and you can scroll down. It tells you what the guide is. Then you can click on the guide, and it's a free download. But one of the appendixes that we included, because everything's about contract, it's a crime that people aren't told the basics of contract law by the time they're old enough to sign one, which is when they're 18. In other words, the bar has made sure that we don't even understand what constitutes a lawful contract. And that is so important, Sophia. If we even put a checklist for people, so if they would just read that and get the basics of contract law, it would help them so much. One of the items on that explanation, and I think it's only 3 pages, is mistake. It is mentioned there for a reason for voiding a contract. But the big thing on this is mutuality. The number one criteria for an enforceable contract, an enforceable agreement, number one is mutuality. You offer this, I accept your offer. I offer this, you accept my offer. We make an exchange. We both agree, mutuality. This is so important because you don't have a contract if one party refuses to sign it, right?
Right, but also what goes with mutuality, I would think, it's just my common sense, is the full disclosure.
Absolutely. In other words, and that's why when people read this thing, and I hope everyone reads this, if you read nothing else, read the basic components of a contract, and when you read it, you should get angry that this wasn't taught as a class when you were a senior in high school, before you became 18. Yes, you can't have mutuality if the terms aren't defined. 2 people cannot agree on something that's not there. So, absolutely, Sophia, you're absolutely right.
So, basic components of a contract is in Lawfully Yours?
Yes.
And it's an appendix?
Yes, I believe it's Appendix D.
Okay, I'll link that. Okay,
Yeah.
This is all very good. I mean, I think people should... Now is the best time. If you're not in a jam already, this is how you can, at your leisure, start re-educating yourself in bits and pieces, in stages. And this actually is enjoyable because it's not difficult. stressful education.
No.
It's something that you will start, it's like a new lens to see through, and you reframe, you see your whole life now in a different way.
Right. And this mutuality, and I know you mentioned this, I think I heard a recording that you did, because I know you have this figured out and you've been trying to spread the word. Mutuality means that we both have the capacities to sign the contract, and we're equals. Okay? And I talked about that in the last program. I cannot get mutuality with a squirrel. I can't get mutuality with a tree. I can't achieve mutuality with a rock. In other words, to get mutuality, you have to be equal. And that we're back to Hammurabi's Law of Kings. Only equals can contract. Well, that's just sort of common sense. I mean, it shouldn't have to be called a law. I mean, shoot, that's common sense. I can't contract with a 1-year-old, for Pete's sakes.
May I ask you to explain the difference between a lawyer and an attorney?
I'm not sure I would even want to go there. I do know some people have made, and a counselor, some people have made that distinction. But my position is, as long as the UCC is the law of the land, and we are dealing with the government that is a network of corporations, and attorneys, counselors, and lawyers are concealing this fact from the public, then I lump them all in the same group of deceivers. I think that's putting it nicely.
Can I throw in what I think, even though you might laugh?
Well, sure. Of course.
Okay, so a lawyer is one who is versed in the law, this bogus law, if you want, this commercial code. Right. An attorney is someone who is now in the position of representing an entity. So you ask a lawyer what to do about such and such, or what are the rules and regulations about such and such situation. But you call your attorney because he's somebody that represents you already, or so-and-so is the attorney for Exxon or such and such. So the attorney is already linked in the referential context with some corporate entity that he is counsel for. Counselor is often British in my experience, but counselor is that's a deferential term. It's more deferential than attorney or lawyer. That's what I've noticed. And, I've had some experience in this legal profession because I've done a lot of temping in my day. But right. So that's what I would say for now, but it could be totally wrong.
Well, I kind of look at attorneys today, unless they've come forward and surrendered their bar card, because if they try to tell this in a public forum or they try to express this in a courtroom, they can get chastised and punished pretty quickly. Melvin Stamper, I don't know if he gave up his bar card, or for all I know, he could have used a pen name. But he came forward and he told the truth. There have been others who have done that, not too many, because they have to earn a living, and to tell the truth about this legal system could very well cost them their living. But at another level, they're indoctrinated. I was just reading something that an attorney wrote, and they are indoctrinated into believing pretty much what the system is, that it's legitimate. I mean, let me read to you. This is what one attorney said recently in an email. In the U.S., you only have the rights that are set out in the U.S. law, semicolon, state and federal statutes, regulations, constitutional sections, and most importantly, the legal precedent that interprets those statutes, regulations, and constitutional sections. Okay, now the legal precedent, that's a bar judge making a decision. Okay? The people never gave the private bar the authority to create an entire legal system for them. So this is what he is taught. This is what he truly believes is going on. And um, w- the ones that I have discovered who found out the truth generally go through a period of depression, because that means that their profession is not the honorable profession they had hoped it was, that they paid all that money to go to law school, and then they discover that they're putting off a scam on all the American people, and that is extremely depressing.
I guess, and I think this is how doctors feel when they discover that the training they've received and the diagnoses they've been taught to make and then consequently, push us in the direction of this or that treatment, lots of the time it's chemical drugs that make us worse. They get very depressed too, and they are in denial. I mean, somebody said to me that he used the example of the Titanic. I mean, the ship is sinking, and the people are saying it isn't. It's fine. So,
Right.
The bar, I just want to find out if you know. Actually, barrister was the British term, not counselor. But anyway, the bar, why is there a different one in every state? If it's the British Accreditation Regency, why do we have a California bar, an Arizona bar, an Ohio bar, bar this, bar that?
I think they keep the pretense that the states have some independent institution, and it's all federal. It's all run from a central place. Joyce talks about that a little bit. How the federal system is dictating what the state system does, and then she felt that then you get down to a local court, and they have local court procedures. And she even mentioned that in her interview. One court may say, well, we're only going to accept paperwork on pink paper, and again, that's just to get people to believe that it's not centrally controlled. But the whole idea of the Uniform Commercial Code is really international law, universal commercial code, based on the law of merchants. That's what it is, based on the law of merchants.
So this would be the maritime law as opposed
Right.
to the law of the land. Now, I want to get into that a little bit too, because as I was learning this a few years ago, or let's just say learning about it, I tested it on some lawyers that I knew, and you should have seen their faces. Just like, like they had just stepped in something bad. Looking at me and saying, that is totally ridiculous and wrong.
Yeah, of
So
course they do.
I was taken aback. I thought, well, if they don't know, and when you say to them, yes, that gold fringed flag
Right.
is not the normal American flag. That's the maritime flag, right? The Admiralty flag.
Well, and even more so if they look at it closely, it's got a presidential filial on the top. So this is us being under martial law, and people don't get it. Martial rule. Some people use the term martial rule, but this is why we have this top-down corporate enterprise. Clinton, and I'm looking at my screen. Clinton, they make these executive orders. Have you noticed, Sophia? Nobody challenges them. Oh, the president made an executive order. Oh, okay then. Why is it that nobody's challenging the executive orders? Well, that's because we're under the permanent state of national emergency, and the executive federal, quote, government, the office of the executive is still in control of the country, which is why we have 450 agencies from that department, from
Okay.
that one branch. But let me read you something just to show people that what we have, and she brought this up as well. It is being run administratively. It is not, our country's not being run legislatively.
Okay, I do. Before you read that, what's at the top of the fringed flag? A presidential what?
Filial, like you see on a lampshade, a little metal thing.
Oh, like the thing that screws on the top?
Yes.
Little ball thing to make the shade not fall off?
Yeah.
It's called a
Yeah.
filial?
Filial, yes.
Oh, I have to find out why.
It's
Okay.
a little decorative thing.
Now, there's got to be a reason for the word filial. I'm going to look it up while you read.
Oh, okay. All right. So now what we're seeing is in 1999, on his own, without Congress or any help from anybody, the President Clinton signed an executive order, 13132. People can go look it up. And it's called federalism. Now, everybody should have said, what the heck is he doing? He's redefining the role of the federal government. And that's exactly what he did. And very few people noticed it. Very few people paid any attention. And this is him moving in this agency network to preempt state law. Okay? To preempt state law. This is how you get these regulations that come into your area. And then when you look to see if there's a state law that was passed to permit them, you find there was not. Okay? So let me read you what he said in this. This is section 4. Special requirements for preemption. Agencies in taking action that preempts state law shall act in strict accordance with governing law. A. Agencies shall construe in regulations and otherwise a federal statute to preempt state law only where the statute contains an express preemption provision, or there is some other clear evidence that the Congress intended preemption of state law, or where the exercise of state authority conflicts with the exercise of federal authority. Does that not tell everybody? To me, there you have it, right there, in a nutshell. Federal regulations from the agencies are authorized to preempt state law. And that's exactly what's going on. In an interview on Coast to Coast, attorney Jonathan Emore, and I do have a clip of that, and I could send it to you, just a short clip, I saved 3 minutes of it, where George Noory was asking him, well, what's going on? And he said, what's going on, and he wrote a book about it, is that the regulations, the whole regulatory system has overtaken the legislative system. In other words, the laws that they're passing are being preempted by the regulations that are coming from the federal government. And I don't know if he ran into this Executive Order 13132, which is in the Federal Register, Volume 64, August 10th, 1999. But this is exactly what's happened. And this is what's happening right now. Sophia, between you and I and the fence post, I think they passed this in 1999. I think they were preparing to bring in the Department of Homeland Security back in 99.
Well, it had to have been planned for a long time. It's a big, expensive department. And if you think about 1999, that was only 2 years before September 11th.
Right.
So, you know, that September 11th plan was in effect. They didn't think of it the day before. They thought of it years and years and years and years, I'm willing to bet.
Right. And I've been told, and I can't remember where I heard it, so this is just coming from my memory, but that the Patriot Act had been written several years before it was launched. That some people said it was prepared, it was written during the Clinton administration.
Oh, yeah. That was written a long time before. I said, because I'm still looking for this filial. I don't see it anywhere. Questions from people, what is the ball called at the top of a flagpole? There's no such term.
Okay, let me look. Maybe I have it wrong. Well, I can look it up after the show. I'm sure if it's not filial, it's finial.
I'll check.
It's something close to that. I have them on my lamps, and you frequently see them on the top of flags. They're just a decorative, generally metal.
Yes, I know. I just need the word.
Okay.
That's all. I'm one of.
But anyway, so
people.
now you found in your research that the Patriot Act was written years before it was brought into Congress, and they passed it. Right? It was ready to go.
Yes, of course.
So this is part, in my opinion, by preempting state law for federal regulation in agencies. This was a preparation for Department of Homeland Security and other agencies. Mostly from what I've looked at, the climate change group that Obama put together is a like 30 agencies he's enlisted to come up with plans for climate change. 30 agencies, and they're going to go throughout the country trying to get regulations and rules passed and implemented in local communities, just completely bypassing state law.
Yeah. No, I am fully.
I knew you would be aware of that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I'm necessarily aware of it in the same detail that you are. That's why you're on here telling us about it. But we have hard times in front of us, and everybody is predicting all different things, that this is the 7th year of 7 7-year periods, this term Shemitah. And so that's when 9/11 happened. It happened in one of the 7th years. Then we had the big stock market crash in 2008. And now 2008 and 7 is 2015. So we're supposed to have some kind of collapse this month. And I think people are going to have to understand what their lawful freedom is all about. And the difference between legal and lawful, let's remind everyone, lawful is common law, legal is this uniform commercial code. And the only way they can enforce these codes on us is through our legal fiction, as long as we agree to be bound to that legal fiction by way of our signature or verbal, yes, I am so-and-so.
Well, and another thing, Sophia, that we brought up in, which is why it was so important to get people to understand contracts, Judge Dale made the point in his book, The Great American Adventure, that the thing about the UCC, okay, that mutuality is really big in law merchant. It really is. That is significant. When they don't tell you everything that's in it, what they're doing is they're violating the basics of UCC as well. So making them live up to their contracts honorably is a good point that Judge Dale made, that they have been getting by because we don't understand that, not living up to their contracts honorably, not giving full disclosure. They've been getting by with these things. Even if we want to contract with them, they've got goofy things, and this Jonathan Emord made that point. They can say, well, this word means this and that word means that, and we didn't put the term in the contract, but it was implied. All of that is in violation of mutuality. So if we're going to engage with them in commerce, we can absolutely start insisting that they be honorable and there be no terms and conditions inflicted on us that we were unaware of. And when they said one wonderful guy, if you've ever seen Don't Talk to Police, that's just astounding. Don't Talk to Police, everyone needs to see. This is a criminal lawyer who gives the fastest lecture I've ever heard in my life, explaining why you can't talk to police.
Is that on YouTube?
Yes, it's on YouTube. It's wonderful.
Okay,
he's not only is he smart, he's articulate and he's funny. And he reminded people that there's thousands of statutes that they passed, and they're calling laws that we don't even know about, Sophia, that we are completely unaware. So it's like we're like walking on glass all the time because we don't even know what's against their laws.
Right. Okay,
That's why it's important to understand that if you don't know it's against their law, I mean, how in the name of gosh can they hold you to that contract, right?
Well, they always say ignorance of the law is no excuse.
That's right.
Huh. Okay, so I know why I was so hyped up about the flag, because Joyce kept saying, you can walk into a courtroom and you can plant the other American flag, the real one without the fringe, and you can set the nature of the court yourself.
Right.
So if you go in there with, I suppose you would attract some attention, with a big old regular American flag, and I don't know where you're going to stick it, but you have to make it stand up, I suppose. And this is why I wanted to be sure that it wouldn't have that presidential thing at the top, which would screw you up, right?
Well, the thing is, she did talk about that. Remember, she talked about that in 2011. Now, I don't am not personally aware of a lot of cases where that has worked. Now, for her to go into a courtroom and make that kind of statement with the knowledge that she obviously had is one thing. But for most people who are just waking up to this, there are all kinds of presumptions in that courtroom that they don't know about. This is why we pretty much in Lawfully Yours do everything we can to help them stay out of that jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Because you really, and I do know some people who've gone in there with some amount of success, and I also know a lot of people who are now in jail. So let me just caution people, that's a lot of research that she did before she was able to actually give the advice that she did about what you do in the courtroom. She had been researching it for more than a decade. So newbies shouldn't probably not even try that, Sophia.
I just thought it was interesting. I didn't know that you have that power to change the nature of the court. But she did 45 years of research.
Yeah, right.
And she was...
And she was helping people. Well, she was around. You could probably call and ask her help. I don't know that she turned anybody down. She was actually giving people guidance and assistance, and I don't think she was charging any of them. From what I gather, all her information was free, which is the way it should be.
Right, and they have this expression, not to be construed as legal advice. Don't give legal advice unless you're a lawyer or an attorney.
Right.
But legal advice is advice about their stuff,
Right.
Interpreting their stuff and talking about the nature of it is not legal advice.
Correct.
It's a discussion and analysis, and we've been kept in the dark way too long.
Well, and most states have passed, and a lawyer reminded me of this. It was really, we got into kind of he was just really upset. He had a bar card in 2 different states, and he was just really upset because, of course, I was saying things that were completely contradictory to what he was taught. And he said, in all 50 states, it's against the law to practice law without a license, and trying to threaten us because we were making Lawfully Yours available. And my response was, you show me your license and I'll show you mine. They don't have a license.
So what are they talking about?
It's their bar card, but they use the term license to confuse people. They don't have a license. They have a bar card. They pay, and Joyce made that point. They pay their union dues. They follow the rules. They get this bar card, which allows them to go into court and sign, give advice, blah, blah, blah. But they do not have a license. It's a private bar guild. No one has a license to practice law. No, the state gives licenses. You get your license through the state. The state doesn't give bar cards.
Well, you think it does, because if you're a member of the California Bar, that's how they use that's the expression. You would think that that's part of the state, but it's not.
But it's not. It is not. It is separate, listed on Dun & Bradstreet, all by itself.
Right, but then again, the state is a corporation as well. California is different from the state of California, and we're so used to saying state of, the state of Ohio, the state of Virginia, the state of New York. But the state of New York is the corporate entity.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
And all those legislators are passing rules, statutes for their own corporation, which a corporation is entitled to do. It's just a question of when they inflict it on you that there's a problem, unless you work for that corporation. There is a problem if you're a state employee, though. If you are employed by the state of California, and that's on your paycheck, there is every reason to believe that they're going to try to inflict their rules on you. And again, if you're trying to protect yourself from, let's just say, vaccine requirements or something other than, they set a new rule saying all state employees are required to have vaccines. That's when people have to really make sure they understand the law of contracts. At what point did you contract with them, and where in your employment contract did it say that you were going to allow them to determine what medication you took? I mean, that's when you start challenging this thing and tearing it apart and saying, wait a minute, I didn't agree to that. I didn't agree to this. Show me where I agreed to that.
Right.
It's really about challenging, don't you think, Sylvia? It's about getting everybody to wake up enough to start challenging. What is your authority? And that's what Joyce said over and over and over. They don't have the authority to do what they're doing.
Yeah, it's very helpful to listen to Joyce. She's very sane, she's very pragmatic, and she's very well versed in all this. And I think you could get more and more and more out of those YouTube parts.
Yes.
Hopefully they won't disappear. So, some of them have very few views. I was surprised. 130 views, people, it's not like those things have made the rounds.
No,
So
it is not. And I've downloaded them and other people have downloaded them. So if they take them down, we'll just put them back up someplace else.
Yeah.
We can just put them on a CD and you could start, I could send you the CD. You could do that and you could sell it. That is not, and I would hope you wouldn't do it for a huge profit. I would hope you would do it just for processing or whatever. And of course, paying yourself for what you've invested and what time it takes. But they are not copyrighted. This is information that, let's say somebody wants to get a CD version so they can listen in the car. I mean, we can do that. That's doable, right?
Right, audio CD.
Right.
So, sure, right now they're on YouTube and people have computers and devices. There was a time when discs were popular and were making the rounds through, people had multi-bay DVD reproducers, CD towers. That was when a lot of people were not on high-speed internet and they didn't have all these portable devices. But now you can, what we should do is actually save those YouTubes as MP3s. And
I did.
So you have them. Okay, that's very good because then we can put up the MP3s somewhere and people can download them.
Right.
And, drive and do errands and
yes, we have that, and I can send them to you, or you can.
Yeah,
I can put,
if you want
I
to
can
put
put them
them
on a
on a
CD
disc.
to burn them and send them to you, and you are more. You're in a better place to mail things to people and have them place orders with you. I've not done that. I was hoping never to have to do that. I'm running 3 websites. That's enough, And
Yeah, we all have different ways of getting information out, so I'd be
Right.
happy to have a CD version. So
Okay.
anyway, I'm glad that we went over this. And again, what we talk about is just an introduction for people to the bigger discussions, the documentation. I know, Anita, you've sent me a bunch of pamphlets and discs, and I'm slowly integrating, absorbing this. This is a new education for me.
Right.
And I'm going to do these interviews with you and others and always post the supportive links, the source documents are in some of those links. Others are just great resources like Joyce's interview. So everybody, please, I will link underneath this discussion, this podcast, the first YouTube for the Joyce Parens Patriae interview series, and then they all link to one another, so you can effortlessly just kind of lie there with your feet up. And I say do this in a relaxed mode first, before you're in a stressful situation.
Right. Right. And don't expect to take it in all at once. I know when I started my journey in 2009, there were 2 things that caught my attention. One was John Harris, It's an Illusion, and that's on the web. He did a video, a YouTube. I watched it and I went, whoa. And when I saw that, Sophia, the information went into my head, but because I didn't know anyone who knew that, I was like all by myself. I didn't know who to talk to. I absorbed it, but I didn't have any idea of how to apply it at the time. I just, it became a part of my awareness, but I didn't know what to do with it.
Right.
And it's taken me several years and a lot of conversations with a lot of people a lot of different information to validate this until I have managed to formulate a picture, and that finally I was ready, with the help of many others, to put together Lawfully Yours as a tool to help people look at different ways of challenging the presumed authority that they don't really have.
Yes, and I want everyone to know that Lawfully Yours, I will link to the PDF that's on Anita's website. Anita's website is anticorruptionsociety.com. And Lawfully Yours has its own menu tab. And there's also a booklet form of it, a bound booklet I think it's $15. And that there's a link to buy that. So you can buy it in bound form. That way you can highlight it, you can put stickies, you can mark it out the way you want to. Sometimes it's easier to read and have something at hand on your shelf.
Right.
So thank you, Anita. I've greatly enjoyed this and happy to know you. It's been a wonderful experience, and I hope it continues and I learn more and more.
Thank you, Sophia, and I share the same feeling. I'm glad to know you, and I'm glad you're doing what you do. This is wonderful.
And we'll have our listeners thank the podcast for being there, and everybody will, and that's another part of this, is to appreciate and thank. And when we change that, instead of always worrying, instead of doing the lack thinking, what I don't have, what I don't know, I think we should start to appreciate what we do have, the connections we're making, what we do know, what we are learning, and the presence. There is a proliferation of information, and it really helps to have people like you, Anita, who've gone through it, as you said, from 2009, all by yourself, and you've put it together now. You're making it ingestible for us. So I'm very grateful, and on behalf of the listeners, I'm expressing that. I'm sure they are very grateful too.
You're most welcome. I'm happy to do it, and I'm happy people are ready to listen and look at it. That's great.
Yes, and we'll soon do another show on the next phase of this, which will figure out what would be the most appropriate next immersion.
Okay.
All right. Thanks again.
You're welcome.